Hey guys, tonight we're traveling deep into the misty heart of Louisiana to a place where moss-draped oaks whisper secrets older than memory, and the walls of a once grand plantation house still echo with the footsteps of those long gone. Welcome to the Myrtles Plantation, where time folds, grief lingers, and not every presence in the hallways is part of the living. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The rain begins quietly soaking into the thick red clay of the Louisiana earth. The air is heavy, the kind that presses gently against your lungs, as if reminding you you're not alone. A long, winding road snakes through ancient cypress and willow, and at the end of it, half hidden by the weeping moss, stands the Myrtles. It doesn't announce itself. The house is large, but hushed, settled into the land like it was always there waiting. Weathered shutters creak slightly, even when there's no wind, and the veranda wraps around like a sleeping serpent. Beneath the overhang, the air is cooler and smells faintly of decaying wood and crushed mint. Inside, everything is still. The furniture gleams with an old, careful polish. A harp sits in the corner of the parlor, its strings silent but tense, as though it's been listening for centuries. It's 1796, and the man standing just inside the front door is General David Bradford. He's alone. The house isn't quite finished, but it's already breathing. He can feel it. A pulse, slow and deep underfoot. It's not his first time. He chose this land for its seclusion. He built with quiet in mind. But even so, something about the shadows between the rooms feels inhabited. He chalks it up to age, to tired nerves. The general has fled a life of politics and suspicion. The whiskey rebellion is behind him, but the weight of those memories still rides on his shoulders like a damp coat. He craves silence, now peace. This house named Laurel Grove was supposed to give him that, but the silence here doesn't comfort. It listens. His footsteps echo faintly as he walks the long hall, his cane tapping against the heart pine floors. The first floor is mostly complete wide rooms, tall ceilings, long windows that barely contain the outside green. Upstairs, his daughters sleep in narrow beds, unaware of the legacy that will grow around these walls. A single candle flickers on the entryway table. He pauses there, looking down at the small object lying beside it. A piece of ribbon. Not his daughters, their upstairs door shut. Dreams untroubled. It's knotted, torn at the edge, still warm. He lifts it, holds it in the candlelight. From somewhere above, a soft knock. Not a door. The floor, like someone walking barefoot across the landing. Bradford doesn't call out, doesn't reach for his pistol. He simply listens. One step, then another, then stillness. He climbs the stairs, slow, each board creaking like a question. At the top, the hall stretches dim and quiet. Moonlight spills in from a small window, casting the hallway in soft silver. The doors to his daughter's room are shut, the candle he left in the wall sconce still lit. And yet, the air feels displaced, the way it does after someone passes you unseen. He opens the nearest door. Empty room, unused. Dust settled thickly on the mantel, but on the window glass, high where no child could reach, is a single handprint. Small, delicate, pressed inward as though someone had leaned against the pane, watching the dark. He stares for a long time, then leaves it untouched. Downstairs again, the candle is out. But the ribbon? Gone. He doesn't mention it in the morning. The girls chatter over breakfast, oblivious. The cook sings to herself in the garden. The house behaves. But as he walks past the parlor, something catches his eye. The harp string is vibrating, ever so slightly. And in that tremble is the beginning of a song that has yet to be played, but has already been heard. The morning sun filters through the high windows in fractured beams, warming the polished wood of the parlor and illuminating dust motes that drift lazily in the still air. The plantation grounds begin to stir beyond the veranda, birds calling softly shudders, creaking open footsteps, crunching gravel on the path that winds toward the stables. Inside, however, the house remains unnaturally quiet, not peaceful, not serene, just watching. General Bradford sits at his writing desk, pen, poised, ink blotched on a half-finished letter. He hasn't written a word in nearly 20 minutes. His eyes keep flicking toward the open doorway where the hall stretches into shadow. There's no movement, no sound, but the weight of presence, subtle and constant, hangs like humidity on his neck. He tells himself it's the isolation. After all, Laurel Grove is far from town. The cypress trees choke the light even during midday, and the land here carries old stories. The enslaved workers speak in hushed tones about the woods beyond the property line, about lantern lights that flicker deep among the trees with no bearer, about voices that call your name in the dark, always just out of reach. Bradford doesn't believe in ghosts, or at least he didn't, but that was before the footsteps, before the ribbon, before the cold spot at the top of the stairs that never fades, no matter how many fires are lit or windows are closed. He rises slowly, joints stiff, and walks toward the back hallway. The door to the study is ajar, odd, since he'd latched it the night before. When he pushes it open, nothing's amiss. The chairs are in place, the books untouched, except for one, a slim volume of French poetry. It lies on the floor, face-down, pages bent as though someone dropped it mid-reading. He picks it up, frowns. He hasn't touched this book in years. On the inside cover in ink, faded brown with age, is a name not his own. See, Delphine. He doesn't know the name. No one by that name has lived here. Not yet. The handwriting is delicate looping, feminine. He places the book back on the shelf spine, out fingers lingering on the worn leather. Then he leaves the room. Later that afternoon, he walks the grounds with his foreman, checking the sugarcane fields and inspecting the perimeter fencing. The sun is sharp, the air still, but Bradford keeps glancing back toward the house. The windows are black from the outside, reflective. And though he knows the upper rooms are empty, he thinks just once he sees a face in the glass. A girl, very still, watching. That night, the air shifts again. As he settles into bed, the candlelight flickers, once then steadies. The room is warm, too warm, the fire still crackling low in the hearth. He turns onto his side, listening to the creak of the house, settling the long, slow groan of old beams expanding in the night. And then a voice, soft, right behind his ear. A single word, stay. He freezes, breath locked in his chest. No footsteps, no rustling sheets, only the sound of the fire popping. Slowly he turns his head. Nothing is there. He sits upright, heart-pounding, sweat prickling his scalp. The candle is out. Only embers glow across the floor, now faint light licking the rug in sleepy orange. And something moves in the mirror across the room. Not him, not a reflection. A shadow deep and wrong, pulling back into the farthest corner, dissolving as if made of smoke. He doesn't sleep. He doesn't light the candle again. He waits spine straight until dawn finally creeps in soft and slow. When he descends the staircase that morning, the scent of magnolia clings thick in the entryway, fresh, as though someone carried the blossoms inside. But there are no flowers in the house, only the ribbon, folded neatly, waiting for him on the bottom step. Bradford doesn't touch the ribbon. He stands over it for a long time, one hand braced on the banister, the other trembling at his side. The house is silent again, but not empty. It never feels empty. The ribbon lies there like a calling card, perfectly folded, its frayed edge, still dark with something that might be wax, or something older, darker. Eventually, he steps around it. In the drawing room, the harp hums faintly, just one low string trembling, like a breath held too long. It stops the moment he enters, as if it had been aware of his footsteps, and embarrassed to be caught. He doesn't mention it to anyone. That morning, he joins his daughters at breakfast. both cheerful and misty. They speak of the rose bushes blooming by the east wall of a blue heron they saw near the water of a dream, in which the youngest Charlotte was gifted a silver comb by a woman in green. Bradford stiffens at that. Who was the woman, he asks, trying to sound casual. Charlotte shrugs. I don't know. She had pretty eyes. She said the comb was for remembering. Remembering what? She didn't say. He exchanges a glance with his older daughter, Elizabeth. She's quiet now, pushing food around on her plate. Something about the weight in her shoulders unsettles him. Later in the library, he searches the family records. The name C. Delphine keeps whispering at the back of his mind, but there's no record of anyone by that name having lived or visited here. Still, he feels it like a thread tugging from just behind the veil of the present. At dusk, he walks the property alone, trailing through the gardens beneath the sprawling limbs of the oaks. The light is gold and low, filtering through Spanish moss that sways with no wind. He notices something carved faintly into the bark of the oldest tree. Letters, barely there. CD. He steps closer, runs his fingers over the engraving. It's old, very old. Moss has begun to reclaim it, but it's there. Suddenly a sound behind him, bare feet on dry leaves. He turns. Nothing. Just the wide open stretch of lawn and the heavy line of trees beyond. But the air is cooler now. The birds have gone quiet. That night, thunder stirs low on the horizon. He can't sleep. The storm hasn't arrived, but the pressure in the house has changed. The walls feel swollen. The hallway upstairs longer than usual. When he lights his candle and opens his bedroom door, the shadows peel back slowly, as if reluctant to let him pass. He finds himself walking the hall candle raised. Outside, lightning flickers, silhouetting the trees against the curtains. Inside, the air thickens. He pauses at the far end of the hall by the room. No one uses the one the girls avoid, without knowing why. He opens the door. The air inside is freezing. The candle flickers violently. He steps in slowly. The room is bare, except for the old rocking chair in the corner. It rocks once, twice, then stops. He steps closer. There in the middle of the empty floorboards is the silver comb, tarnished, delicate, its teeth tangled with a single dark hair. He kneels, picks it up gently. A voice sighs behind him, soft, wistful. Don't forget. He doesn't turn. He can't. The wind howls outside at last. The candle goes out, and the door shuts behind him. The door closes with a hush, rather than a slam wood against wood, slow and deliberate. Bradford sits frozen on the floor of the empty room, the silver comb cold in his palm. He doesn't breathe at first. The dark holds him there thick and close until the storm outside cracks the silence with a single roll of thunder. Only then does he inhale slow, shallow, and stand. The comb is heavier than it should be. He slips it into his coat pocket, fingers trembling as he reaches for the door handle. It turns easily. The hallway beyond greets him like nothing happened. No shadow, no sound, but the rocking chair is still moving, just slightly, just enough. He doesn't speak of it the next day. Not to his daughters, not to the staff, but something has shifted in him, and the house seems to know. It watches him differently now, less patient, more intent. The floor's grown more loudly when he walks. The harp, long silent, plucks at itself during breakfast, as if tuning for a performance no one has rehearsed. Outside, the days stay warm, but the wind tastes like iron. The comb stays in his pocket. He means to put it away, bury it, burn it, throw it into the marsh. But he doesn't. He tells himself he's only keeping it to understand that the key to all of this must lie in its weight. But it's more than weight. It calls. That afternoon he hears humming, not from the parlor, not from his daughters, from the mirror. The large one in the hallway, framed in oak, warped slightly with age. It's said to be French, passed down through 3 generations, though no one remembers who brought it into the house. It reflects the hallway behind him, but the light seems wrong. Slower, thicker, and within that reflection a woman, not standing, not quite visible, but present. He steps closer. She doesn't vanish. She simply tilts her head, He cannot see her face, only the shape, the outline of a figure in a soft green dress hair pinned back. Her hands are folded, her posture still, but she is watching him. Bradford doesn't move. He doesn't dare. The mirror begins to fog from the inside. Letters form in the condensation. Return. He blinks. The message fades. The glass clears. She is gone. He stumbles back, heart hammering. The silver comb burns in his pocket, hot now, pulsing faintly like a second heartbeat. That night the storm returns in full. Thunder cracks across the ceiling. Wind slams against the shutters. Bradford lights every candle in the hallway and sits by the hearth with a book pretending to read. The fire dies early. The air grows cold. He knows it's near. He hears her footsteps on the upper landing. Soft, deliberate, not rushing, not shy. She moves as if she belongs here. He doesn't go to her, but the comb. He places it on the mantel, and the moment he does, the air in the room eases. The wind stops. The candles stop flickering. He sleeps in the chair by the cold fire, uneasy but unbothered. But when he wakes before dawn, the comb is gone. In its place, a single small handprint on the soot-blackened brick, still warm, still pressing. The handprint remains there until the light of morning washes it away. As the sun climbs slowly over the horizon, its pale rays stretch through the parlor window, illuminating the hearth. By the time Bradford rises from the stiff chair, the soot has dulled, the warmth has fled, and the imprint, child-sized, distinct, has faded into a gray smudge. But he saw it, and he remembers. The day unfolds with a strange hush, as if the plantation itself holds its breath. The workers move slower. Conversations are quiet. Even the birds seem to avoid the wide oaks that ring the house. Something has changed, not in the structure of Laurel Grove, but in its spirit. Bradford walks the rooms with a quiet purpose, now stopping in doorways, listening to the subtle rhythm of the house. He senses something in its bones. Not malevolence, not madness, just a restless awareness. The walls feel saturated with unfinished words. When he passes the mirror again, it is clear, clean, normal, but he avoids looking too long. At midday, his daughter Elizabeth finds him on the back veranda, staring into the trees. She's holding something behind her back, her expression uncertain. She steps closer. "I found this," she says softly and holds out a ribbon. Not just a ribbon. The ribbon, folded again. Edges frayed, still damp as if it had been caught in fog. Bradford doesn't reach for it. "Where?" "In the garden," she says, tied around the stem of Mama's rose bush. The mention tightens his chest. He takes the ribbon, gently cradling it as though it might crumble in his hands. "She's here, isn't she?" Elizabeth asks. Bradford looks at her. She's 14, too old to lie, too young to understand what it means to carry the weight of the unseen. But there's something in her eyes. She knows. He nods once. Elizabeth doesn't look afraid. "She followed the comb," she says. "Didn't she?" He doesn't answer. That night he places the ribbon on the writing desk, lit by a single candle. He writes a letter, this one not addressed to anyone living. He begins with, "I know I disturbed something I never should have touched. I do not know your name, only the shape you leave behind, the scent of roses, the silence in the room that should creak but doesn't, the mirror that watches back." As he writes, the candle wavers, and the ink begins to bleed, not from the bottom, from the top. A single droplet of water lands on the page. Bradford looks up. The ceiling is dry, but the air is damp, very damp. He leaves the room without finishing the letter. He climbs the stairs, every step groaning like a held breath. At the end of the hallway, the unused bedroom door is open. Inside, the silver comb is on the floor again, this time cracked. Beside it, the rocking chair sways, and in the far corner, just beyond the firelight's reach, stands a figure in green. Still, not hostile, just waiting. He doesn't speak, and neither does she. But as he steps into the room, the door drifts shut behind him, and the fire dims, only slightly. The shadows do not reach for him. They make room, and for the first time since arriving, the house feels almost calm, as if someone has been Unseen, at last, the night settles into the bones of the house like a lullaby sung too slowly. Bradford sits in the unused bedroom, the cracked comb cradled in his hands, the fire whispering in the hearth behind him. The room is quiet now, not the oppressive kind of silence, but the heavy kind, like a pause between heartbeats. A stillness that follows the exhale of something ancient. He dares a glance toward the corner. The figure in green is gone. No whisper, no flicker, no sound of retreat. Just the empty air where she once stood cool and undisturbed. And somehow that absence is louder than her presence ever was. The rocking chair has stopped. The comb's fracture is clean diagonal, almost like a deliberate parting. He runs his thumb over the break, and for a moment he thinks he hears something, a soft hum like breath caught in glass. But it fades. When he returns to his bed, he doesn't sleep, but the house does. No footsteps, no harp string, only the low thrum of the storm in the distance and the occasional rustle of ivy outside his window. Morning arrives in slats of gray light, and with it a letter, unmarked, folded. It rests on his writing desk, as though it had always been there. The wax seal is faded, the paper smelling faintly of lavender and wood smoke. Inside a single line in looping delicate script. She is not the only one who remembers. He reads it once, then again, then burns it in the hearth. Ash curls into the air like moth wings. That day, workers report strange sounds in the Eastfield voices, they say, whispering low under the tall cane. No one is found. No one is missing. But by nightfall, 3 refuse to return until prayers are said aloud at the edge of the property. Bradford doesn't dismiss them. Instead, he walks the plantation with a lantern after dusk, alone circling the grounds. He listens. He feels. He notes where the air dips cold, where the wind bends without breeze, where the birds stop singing before he arrives. By the time he returns to the house, the stars have risen. A candle is already lit in the front window. He didn't leave it there. He extinguishes it with a slow breath, then turns to the mirror in the hallway. This time his own reflection is not alone. Beside him, faint and wavering, stands a child. Young, barefoot, her dress torn at the sleeve, her eyes impossibly dark. He doesn't move. The child lifts her hand and presses her palm to the glass. And once again, that single word forms in the frost. Stay. But this time it's not a plea. It's a warning. He blinks. She's gone. The hallway is empty. But the comb, now whole, once more lies at the base of the mirror. Waiting, Bradford kneels slowly, the hem of his coat brushing the wood floor as he reaches for the comb. It's flawless now. No crack, no tarnish, not even a smudge. The same silver glint, the same delicately carved teeth. But as his fingers close around it, a chill seeps into his skin, not painful, but intimate, like the cold touch of a hand once familiar. He rises, staring into the mirror, only his reflection, but it's not quite right. There's something in the posture, the tilt of his head, the shadow around his eyes, as if the version staring back is waiting for him to say something, some phrase, some name to unlock the truth of this house. He doesn't speak. Instead, he turns and walks back to his study, the comb still clutched in his hand. He places it on the desk beside a fresh sheet of paper and begins writing again. This time, not to the dead, but to the future. There is something here that does not rest. And it's not just a woman in green or a ribbon or a comb. This house listens. It remembers. It responds. The words flow without effort. It does not hate us, but it is hungry for memory. A floorboard creaks behind him. Not directly behind, no. Farther back, down the hall. He pauses, waits. Nothing follows. The next day, Elizabeth doesn't speak much. She spends most of the afternoon sitting near the rose bushes, braiding clover into a ring. Bradford watches her from the window. She isn't frightened. If anything, she seems comfortable, like she's not alone, but accompanied. He knows better than to interrupt. Inside, the house is restless again. The harp emits a low drone, not a note, but a hum. A vibration that seems to pass through the furniture. The mirrors remain quiet, but the glass windows reflect things that shouldn't be there. A figure walking in the garden, a woman passing through the parlor, a child leaning over the banister, yet when he turns, no one. That evening, as dusk bleeds into the hallways, he hears soft laughter from the second floor. Not his daughter's, something older, lonely. He climbs the stairs slowly, lantern in hand. The laughter fades, not abruptly, just dwindles into silence like a memory. At the top of the stairs, the comb lies on the floor again. Only this time it's accompanied by something else. A scrap of green silk, torn at the edge, threadbare. He picks it up, smells it. Lavender, exactly like the letter. He looks up. At the end of the hallway, the unused bedroom door is open once more. But this time, so is the window inside it. And the rocking chair is turned to face the corner, towards something. He steps inside. The fire is already lit. No one is there. But someone has been. There's a warmth in the room. A lived-in sense of comfort beneath the dread. The green fabric still in his hand, he places it on the chair's armrest. Beside it, the comb. He doesn't speak. He just stands there long enough to feel a draft brush past him, soft, like skirts sweeping a floor. The fire flickers slightly, then strengthens. He doesn't look behind him. He simply says thank you and leaves the room. When he returns to his study, another letter awaits. Same paper, same scent, same delicate script. You are not the first. You will not be the last. But you are the first to listen. And beneath it, smaller, keep the comb close. It remembers better than we do. Bradford folds the letter and tucks it into his journal. He doesn't sleep that night, but the house does. And for once it dreams gently. For the next 3 days, the house breathes easy. The creaks and whispers soften. The cold spots at the top of the stairs warm slightly, no longer biting with that unnatural chill. The harp rests quiet. Even the mirror by the hallway, once so eager to reveal glimpses of the past, reflects only what it should. And yet Bradford knows this calm is not permanent. It is a pause, a breath between verses. He carries the comb in his coat pocket, now no longer tempted to leave it on mantels or windowsills. The weight of it anchors him. Sometimes it pulses faintly in rhythm with his heartbeat. Sometimes just after. Like it's remembering him, too. He writes more. Long entries in his journal, not of facts, but of feelings. Impressions. Fragments. A shadow moved ahead of me in the corridor, but the candlelight did not stretch that far. The mirror was black this morning. I don't mean empty, I mean black. As if the glass had turned to ink. Elizabeth's humming matches the harp. I don't know how she knows the tune. One afternoon, he finds his younger daughter Charlotte standing in the unused room. The one with the rocking chair. The one with the fire that lights itself. She's alone, hands folded neatly. Her gaze fixed on the far corner. When he steps inside, she turns to him and smiles, not mischievous, not afraid. Peaceful. She's sad today? Charlotte says softly. Bradford kneels beside her. Who is? The lady, the one with the green dress. He nods slowly. What did she say? She didn't talk. She just looked at me. Charlotte frowns, then leans in like she's sharing a secret. She doesn't like the man in the blue coat. Bradford stiffens. What man? I don't know, Charlotte whispers. But he's not in the house. Not all the way. He's waiting in the tree. Bradford walks the grounds alone that evening. The air is heavy, storm-like, though no clouds stain the sky. The tree Charlotte spoke of stands near the edge of the property, older than the house itself. Its limbs twist like fingers. Long, crooked. He stares at it for a long time. The wind dies as he approaches. A bird caws sharply, then goes silent. He places a hand on the trunk. It's warm, and for a moment the world around him feels stretched, like a skin pulled tight over something immense. The silence here isn't gentle like the house's. It's watching, and it's waiting. That night the harp plays itself again. 3 notes. Soft. Low. Meaner. The window in the unused room is open once more, though no one had gone inside. On the rocking chair sits the blue coat. Dusty, old, military cut, and underneath it, a letter, folded, unsigned. She was punished for listening. I was punished for silence. One of us is still bound, and beneath it a second line. Don't let her remember alone. Bradford lights the fire and watches the blue coat catch flame. It burns fast, too fast. The room is quiet again. But as he turns to leave the mirror on the far wall, shatters not with sound, not with force, but with absence. The glass is simply gone, and behind it brick, and in the mortar scratched faintly, C. Delphine, 1802. She had a name after all. Bradford stares at the carved name fingertips tingling, as if the letters themselves reach out through time. The bricks behind the vanished mirror are old, older than the rest of the wall. The mortar is darker, hand-mixed, the kind used in the original construction. C. Delphine. He breathes it aloud softly. The name echoes slightly, though there's no room for echo. Behind him, the fire lets out a sharp pop. When he turns, the comb is gone from his coat pocket. Not lost, taken. He doesn't search. He simply waits. That night, sleep comes like water, slow creeping, eventually pulling him under. He dreams not of places, but of voices. Dozens at first, then hundreds layered over murmurs. Only one is clear, a woman's voice, measured, sad. He was not supposed to come back. He wakes just before dawn. A pale light lingers at the window. The fire in the hearth is out, but the room smells faintly of lavender. The comb lies neatly on his nightstand. Beside it a key, small, iron, ornate. He recognizes it. The attic. No one has gone up there in years. The key is warm in his palm as he climbs the narrow stairs. Cobwebs brush his sleeves. The air thickens with every step, dust swirling in slow spirals like dancers in mourning. At the top, the door yields with a groan. Inside, silence, but not emptiness. The attic stretches longer than he remembers. Its beams low, its air stale. Covered furniture creates the impression of figures, some hunched, some seated, some reaching. It takes him a moment to see it. The trunk in the far corner, not large, oak, brass fittings, and on the lid, etched by hand, CD. He kneels. The lock accepts the key without hesitation. The lid creaks open, and the scent of damp lace and iron rises. Inside are garments, delicate hand-stitched, faded with time. A small journal bound in green leather. A faded portrait of a woman in a soft green dress, sitting by the window, half turned from the painter. And at the bottom, beneath a folded shawl, a second comb, identical, but broken, snapped clean in two. He touches the spine of the journal. It's fragile, but when he opens it, the ink is sharp and unweathered. The entries begin in 1801. They are short, measured. Each begins the same way. I am not mad. I am not mad. I am not mad. One entry reads, he watches me from the grove. He wears blue and says nothing, but I feel his anger when I pass. The children are frightened of the mirror now. It does not show their faces, only mine. Another later, I told the mistress the truth about him. She slapped me so hard I saw stars, then sent me away from the house. The tree keeps growing toward the window. The roots are cracking the foundation. And one more written in a shakier hand. I buried the truth where they wouldn't think to look, behind my own eyes. But sometimes when the harp sings, I remember it anyway. Bradford closes the book gently. The air shifts. The attic groans softly, not with settling wood, but like something stirring from a long, exhausted sleep. As he turns to leave, he sees it, carved faintly into the beam above the trunk. She was never alone. He leaves the comb behind, the broken one, and takes the journal with him. Downstairs, the house feels alert again. Not hostile, not quite welcoming, but awake, as though someone has turned a page. Bradford doesn't speak of the attic to anyone, not to his daughters, not to the staff. The journal stays tucked inside his coat pocket, wrapped in a linen cloth to keep it from the damp. He doesn't read more than he already has. Not yet. Instead, he listens. The house has shifted again, not violently, but profoundly. Rooms feel deeper. Echoes stretch a beat too long. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticks in double time for several minutes. before correcting itself. The comb, once eager to wander, now rests quietly where he places it on the mantel beside the half-burned blue coat button he retrieved from the hearth. That evening, he walks the eastern side of the grounds again toward the grove where the twisted tree looms. The sun has dipped below the sugarcane fields, casting long fingers of shadow that reach hungrily toward the veranda. The tree is waiting. He doesn't go all the way to it, not yet. He watches from a distance, breath shallow. Its limbs barely sway, though there's no wind. One of the lower branches, crooked and heavy, bends toward the house unnaturally, as if pointing or accusing. He speaks aloud, unsure if to the tree or the memory buried in it. "She didn't betray you," he says. "She tried to warn them." The leaves rustle softly, like silk skirts brushing the floor. That night, he wakes at 2:14 a.m. precisely. Not to sound, not to movement, to cold. A brutal, unnatural cold that seems to pour from the baseboards. Frost webs along the corners of the windows, and the fire in the hearth is snuffed, not faded. Even his breath clouds before him. Then light footsteps, not heavy, not angry, just slow, barefoot, across the wood floor of the hall. Bradford rises slowly and opens the door. Nothing inside, but down the hallway the mirror is no longer reflecting the opposite wall. It shows a different room entirely, one not in the house. A parlor, faintly lit. Rain streaks the window. And standing in it, Delphine, clear as breath on glass. She does not speak, but she lifts her hand and points to the wall beside her. On it hangs a portrait, aged, cracked, but still vibrant. A man in a blue coat, sharp nose, cold eyes. The same man from the uniform burned in the rocking chair. He's seated, one hand resting on a book, and scrawled into the bottom corner of the painting, nearly hidden in the brushstrokes. "Ah, Yun." Bradford doesn't recognize the initials, but when he leans closer, the mirror shimmers and blinks out. Gone. Only the hallway behind him remains. The frost has vanished. The fire rekindles itself with a soft hiss, and on the floor beneath the mirror, a single white rose, fresh, dew-kissed, with a torn green ribbon tied delicately around the stem. Bradford picks it up with careful fingers. He doesn't understand the full picture yet, but he knows this much. She is trying to show him, piece by piece, memory by memory. And now he suspects the mirror was never a mirror at all, but a window, not to the past, but to the buried. And the buried, it seems, have found their voice. Bradford places the rose on the desk beside Delphine's journal and watches the ribbon slowly unravel on its own, the loose ends curling like tendrils of smoke. The fire crackles softly behind him, warmer now, gentler. He doesn't write that night. Instead, he opens the journal again, carefully turning past the entries he's read. The ink grows more erratic as the pages progress, less structured, more fragmented. But one phrase keeps repeating, always alone on the page, like a chant carved in desperation. The walls forget, the mirrors do not. It appears 5 times in succession, each written in darker ink, more pressure behind the stroke. He closes the book gently, careful not to smudge the memory. The next morning is thick with humidity. The sky the color of old pewter. The kind of day that holds back its storm-building pressure like a coiled spring. The house groans under the weight of it. Doors swell in their frames. The air smells faintly of ozone and something older, charred wood iron and faint perfume. Bradford visits the gallery for the first time since arriving. Few people do. It's tucked behind the old music parlor, accessible only through a narrow doorway, partially hidden by velvet curtains. Inside, portraits line the walls. Generations of residents and guests of the plantation, frozen in oil and varnish. Most of the names are lost to time, but one painting stops him. A young woman in a soft green dress, seated by a window. Her hair pinned in the style of the early 1800s. No smile, just a calm gaze and tired eyes that seem to look just past whoever is viewing her. Delphine. It has to be. The plaque below reads C. Delphine 1801, artist unknown. Beside it, half covered by shadow, hangs another, a man in a blue coat, the same painting from the mirror. Same posture, same sharp eyes, but here the brushstrokes are more violent, harsher, less precise. The background is an ambiguous wash of black and gray. There's no plaque beneath his portrait. As Bradford studies the painting, he feels the floor beneath his boots hum faintly. The harp is playing again, but this time the melody is structured, intentional. A waltz, slow and solemn. 3 notes up, 3 notes down. He follows the sound not to the parlor, but to the unused room. It's open again. Inside, Charlotte is standing by the fireplace, staring into the mirror above the mantel. The harp melody threads softly through the air, though the instrument is nowhere in sight. Bradford enters cautiously. Charlotte. She doesn't turn. She's not angry anymore, she says. Who? The lady. Charlotte tilts her head, still facing the mirror. She wants you to see it. The glass darkens. Not suddenly, not with violence like dusk seeping across water. Slowly shapes emerge. A room. Not the one they're in. This one is circular, lit by candlelight. There's a woman in green, kneeling by a fireplace, placing something behind the stonework. A comb, the broken one. Behind her, the man in the blue coat enters. He doesn't speak, but his hand rises and in it a fire iron. The moment before impact, the mirror goes black. Charlotte flinches. The fire in the room dies instantly, plunging them into silence. Bradford walks slowly to the hearth and kneels, pressing his hands to the warm brick where Delphine knelt in the vision. He taps. One brick sounds hollow. He pries it loose with the fire poker. Inside a small bundle of cloth. Wrapped in it, a second journal, not Delphine's. The handwriting is coarser, sharper, and on the first page, Confession of R. Allard, 1802. He flips the page. She threatened to speak. To tell them what I did to the boy. I couldn't let her ruin me, so I made her disappear. I told them. She ran. But I kept the memory in this room where no one would dig. Except her. Always her. The rest of the entries grow incoherent guilt, curdling into madness sentences, looped into spirals, pages torn out. Bradford closes the book, heart pounding. He understands now. Delphine didn't haunt this house because she was wronged by fate or forgotten by time. She remained because someone buried the truth and sealed it in silence. But mirrors remember, and now so does he. Bradford doesn't sleep that night. He paces the study, the confession in one hand, Delphine's journal in the other. The wind presses against the windows with rising insistence, and the house creaks not with old age, but as though it too is uneasy with the weight of what's been unearthed. At 3:03 a.m., the mirror above the unused room's fireplace fogs again. He doesn't wait for invitation. He goes. The door is already open, the fire lit. And the mirror, it no longer shows reflections. It shows the same circular room from before, but now it's empty. No Delphine, no R. Allard, just dust and the fire guttering low in its hearth. Bradford steps closer. Whispers rise faintly. Not from the mirror, but from the very walls. Not menacing. Mourning. A chorus of breath barely held. She stayed for us. She remembered. She tried to tell. Bradford speaks softly to the glass. I know the truth now. The mirror flickers. For a heartbeat, his own reflection returns. But behind him, a dozen pale faces stare past his shoulder. Some children. Some older. All silent. He does not turn around. I'll write it, he says. All of it. The faces blink out. And once again, the room is just a room. When dawn breaks, the storm comes. Not thunder and lightning, but rain. Soft, relentless, cleansing. Bradford sits at his desk and begins writing the full account. He uses his own words first, then copies the confession of R. Allard verbatim, binding it with Delphine's journal, a ribbon of green holding the papers together. That afternoon, he rides to the parish office in town. He hands the bundle to the archivist without explanation. Seal it in the public record, he says. File it under the plantation's original land deed. The archivist hesitates. You don't want a name on the donation? No, Bradford replies. Just the truth. When he returns home, the harp no longer hums. The rocking chair no longer moves. The mirror in the hallway, the one that never reflected properly, now shows only what stands before it. Bradford sleeps that night for the first time in weeks, and when he wakes, the comb is gone. Only a single white rose remains on his pillow. No ribbon, no note. just peace. Charlotte no longer speaks of the lady in green, but sometimes Bradford finds her staring out the window at the edge of the grove. He joins her in silence. The tree has changed. Its branches no longer bend toward the house. Instead, they stretch skyward open. Still twisted, yes, but no longer reaching with menace. One afternoon, Charlotte takes his hand and whispers, "She's gone now." Bradford squeezes gently. "You're sure?" She nods. She said thank you. He doesn't ask when or how she heard it. He simply believes her. The house breathes easy. The shadows stay where they belong. The mirrors behave. And the past, though never forgotten, is finally at rest. Not erased, but acknowledged, remembered, and in the remembering forgiven. Weeks pass. The plantation eases into a new rhythm, one that feels quieter, more grounded. The changes are subtle, but undeniable. The air no longer holds that faint electric tension. Footsteps echo only once, and the corners of rooms no longer feel like they're hiding breath. Bradford continues to write, though less feverishly now. His journal has become less a catalog of events and more a meditation. He records sensations, changes in light, the moods of the house. One morning, while inspecting the west corridor, he notices the scent of jasmine. It stops him mid-step. There are no jasmine plants on the grounds, not anymore, yet the smell lingers faintly, as if drifting on air warmed by candlelight. He follows it, not through doors, but down into the cellar. It's cooler there, the air thick with age and the earthy scent of stone. Cobwebs hang in filaments, catching the morning light that slips through a grate above. In the far corner, near a crumbling foundation wall, there's something new. A shallow depression in the earth, freshly disturbed. Bradford kneels, heart steady, and brushes the soil aside. It parts easily, as though waiting for him. Just beneath the surface, his fingers strike wood, a small box, oak-bound in tarnished brass. He lifts it gently, brushes away the remaining dirt, and unclasps the latch. Inside, a lock of dark hair carefully braided, a ribbon soft green fraying at the ends, and a letter, unsealed. He unfolds it. The handwriting is familiar now, Delphines. If you've found this, then the house is ready. I buried what they could not destroy, what they feared even more than memory proof that I lived and that I loved. I forgive them, but I do not forget them, and neither should you. Let this be the last unmarked grave beneath these walls. Bradford breathes in deeply and closes the box. He does not rebury it. He brings it upstairs and places it in the center of the parlor mantel beside the old mirror that once opened into other worlds. He leaves it unhidden, visible, respected. That evening, the family gathers in the parlor for the first time in months. Elizabeth plays a soft tune on the old piano. Charlotte hums along while watching the flames in the hearth dance with quiet rhythm. Bradford, seated in his worn armchair, feels the warmth settle in his chest. Not heat peace. For the first time, the house feels whole, not just repaired, but healed. And when the wind rises outside, brushing the shutters with a gentle hand, he knows it's only wind, not something trying to return. Not anymore. The days grow longer. Summer spills slowly across the grounds, softening the hard angles of the house. Ivy creeps higher along the brick walls, and songbirds nest in the eaves. The plantation, once heavy with silence, now wakes each morning with the sounds of live crickets rustling, leaves the occasional distant laughter of children. But still, some evenings the quiet returns, not the cold, suffocating silence of unrest, a reverent kind, as if the house is remembering with him. Bradford begins to open the estate to visitors. Just a few at first, historians, preservationists, curious locals. He walks them through the old halls, tells them of the architecture, the rare hardwoods, the intricate plasterwork in the drawing room. But he does not tell them everything. Not yet. Some things must be learned. One day, a young historian named Irene asks about the woman in the green dress. She's read whispers of her in old letters and rumors. Was she real? Irene asks, eyes bright with curiosity. Bradford smiles faintly. She was. And the mirror? A window, he says softly. But it's closed now. He shows her the journal. Not to keep, but to see. She reads with reverence, flipping each page like it might dissolve under her fingers. When she finishes, her hands tremble slightly. She was brave, Irene whispers. She remembered Bradford replies. That's all she ever needed. That night, he returns the journal to its shelf, beside the sealed confession and the lock of hair. The mantle is no longer a place for decoration. It is an altar of truth. Elizabeth begins to paint again, mostly landscapes, trees, rivers, golden fields. But sometimes Bradford catches glimpses of other things in her work. A green ribbon fluttering from a willow branch, a broken comb resting on a sunlit windowsill, or a shadowy figure watching from the edge of a dream. He doesn't stop her. He understands. Memory finds its way into all things. Charlotte, now older, writes poems. She shares one at dinner. The house once whispered through the floor of things unsaid and something more. But now it hums a softer song of lives made right, of right from wrong. They clap gently, and Bradford watches her with quiet pride. She has no memory of the days before the stillness lifted, but somehow she knows. The tree in the grove no longer casts long shadows. Its branches bloom with white flowers in spring, and the wind dances through them like a lullaby. Sometimes Charlotte sits beneath it and reads aloud to no one in particular. But Bradford knows someone listens. Someone always did. And when he walks past the parlor mirror now, it reflects only what it should: a man a little older, a house a little warmer, and nothing standing behind him anymore. No faces, no fog. Just the piece of a story remembered and finally told. A gentle rain rolls in late one afternoon, soft, persistent, and smelling of earth and memory. Bradford watches it from the veranda, a mug of tea warming his hands as the gray sky leans close over the plantation. The fields blur into a watercolor of green and silver. He listens not for voices, but for absence. And for the first time in years, absence does not feel like loss. Inside the house is quiet, not unnaturally, so just comfortably still. The kind of stillness that lets you hear your own breath, your own heart, without interruption. He walks the halls again, as he often does, not checking for signs anymore. No cold spots, no shifting mirrors, just revisiting the bones of the house, honoring them. In the eastern wing, the unused room has become something else entirely. It's no longer the unused room. Charlotte has claimed it gently and without formality. She's moved in a low writing desk, bookshelves, soft white curtains that filter the sun like gauze. The mirror above the fireplace still hangs in its original place, but it no longer stares with depth. It's just glass now. Ordinary. Flat. But Charlotte still talks to it sometimes, not out of fear, out of habit. "Good morning," she says when she enters. "Sleep well." Bradford smiles when he hears her. He understands. Some rituals stay even after the reason for them has faded. In the attic, the trunk remains untouched. He hasn't opened it since that day. But once in a while, he leaves fresh jasmine near it. No ceremony, no words, just a gesture. One afternoon, while tending the small garden near the west wall, he finds a single white rose growing from the earth. Wild, untamed. There are no rose bushes on that side of the property, but he says nothing. He only kneels and touches the petals, soft, fragrant, familiar. Back inside, Elizabeth shows him her latest painting. It's the house, but not as it is, as it was. In the corner, almost hidden in shadow, stands a woman in green, barely rendered, as if fading or emerging. Her face turned not toward the viewer, but toward the windows. "She's watching," Elizabeth says quietly. "Or waiting," Bradford replies. And in that moment, he doesn't fear her return, because some presences don't come back to haunt. They return to witness, to see the healing for themselves. That night, the air is thick with the scent of honeysuckle and old wood. Bradford lays in bed with the windows open, letting the night breathe through the house. The last thing he hears before sleep isn't a voice or footsteps or whispers in the room. It's laughter, soft, faint, like someone far away remembering something kind. And for once, Bradford doesn't need to know if it's real. Because in this house where every wall once wept and every silence once screamed peace is its own kind of haunting, one that stays. The first autumn arrives gently. The trees lining the driveway shift into rust and amber, their leaves drifting down like old letters from forgotten hands. The cane fields brown at the tips, swaying slower now, like they too are tired from remembering. Bradford walks the property more often now, not to investigate, but to visit. The groves, the gardens, even the outer barns, each space holds a different chapter of the story that once struggled to be heard. Now that it's been spoken, the silence feels companionable, trusted. He passes the tree, the one in the eastern field that once bent its limbs like accusations, and sees something unexpected. A ribbon, soft green, tied carefully around the lowest branch like a bow at a child's wrist. He doesn't touch it, just nods once and continues on. That evening, as dusk settles into the corners of the house, Bradford pulls an old trunk from the basement. Not the one in the attic, but a smaller dust-covered one, long forgotten under the stairs. Inside are ledgers, oil lamps, and photographs with cracked edges. He sorts through them carefully, setting aside the most weathered, the ones with initials in the corners, AGMWJR, names he doesn't recognize, but whose eyes seem to follow with faint familiarity. He begins a new project, not a book this time, a wall. In the upstairs hallway, where the light from the west-facing windows glows softest in the evening, he hangs a series of frames, not ornate, not polished, just simple wood and glass. Inside the journal pages, the confession, a scan of the Delphine portrait, the white rose now pressed flat against parchment, and the green ribbon framed on its own untouched. He adds no labels, no titles, just truth. One day, visitors stop in unexpectedly, two young women from a local university researching spiritual folklore. They're respectful, soft-spoken. They ask about the house's history, about the structure, the land, and eventually about the mirror. It's just a mirror now, Bradford says with a smile. They ask if he ever feared it. No, he replies. What's to fear in a memory that only wants to be seen? They nod thoughtfully. Before they leave, one of them lingers in the hallway, staring at the framed green ribbon. She was here, wasn't she? The girl whispers. Bradford looks at the ribbon, then at the mirror's reflection beside it. Only the hallway. Only the light. She still is, he says, and the girl smiles. When they're gone, and the house settles again into quiet, Bradford sits at the piano for the first time since his wife passed. He's never played more than a few notes, but tonight, his fingers fall into place with surprising ease. 3 notes up, 3 notes down, the beginning of a waltz, and as the final note hums into the air, the mirror across the room glows briefly. No reflection, no vision, just a soft shimmer, like a curtain gently swaying, and then stillness, but not emptiness, something watching, something grateful, and Bradford, with a smile he didn't know he'd been saving, simply says, "Good night, Delphine." The days grow shorter. Golden light stretches low across the floors in the late afternoon, and the plantation glows with the kind of warmth that belongs to old souls, places that have endured, breathed, and finally exhaled. Bradford's daily rituals now include tending to the library, sorting old documents, and cataloging pieces of the house's past he once would have been too cautious to disturb. But the fear is gone. What remains is care. In a weathered ledger tucked between 2 brittle receipts from the early 1800s, he finds something unexpected, a map, hand-drawn, ink faded. It outlines the plantation, but with strange markings, circles near the East Grove, an X beneath what is now the guest cottage, and a note in near illegible cursive, "Where the child wept, the earth remembers." Bradford traces the ink with his thumb, heart slow and steady. He follows the map, past the edge of the cultivated land near where the magnolia trees grow thick and unruly, he finds it a stone half swallowed by earth and ivy. Plain, unmarked, he kneels and clears it with his hands. Beneath the moss, carved faintly in the stone's face, are 2 letters, D.A., Delphine Allard. He exhales not with surprise, but with confirmation. All these years they believed she was lost, fled, vanished, but she had remained even in death, her resting place hidden not out of shame, but of protection. He leaves no flowers, only presses his palm to the stone, whispers a soft, "Thank you," and walks back to the house under the hush of late light. That evening, he tells Charlotte the truth. Everything. Not to burden her, but to gift her. She listens with wide, quiet eyes. And when he finishes, she asks, "Do the dead know they're at peace?" Bradford thinks before answering. "I think they know when they've been seen." Charlotte nods once. Then she knows. Later that night, while brushing her teeth, she stops mid-motion, staring into the bathroom mirror. Bradford hears her call and comes quickly. The mirror is fogged, just at the top corner, and in it, scrawled by a finger unseen, "You kept your promise." Then gone. The steam vanishes. Just their own reflections remain. Bradford says nothing. He only pulls her into a hug, holds her close, and feels the last threads of a haunting unravel into something else. Not sorrow, not even memory, just grace. A story no longer trapped between glass and shadow, but told and heard. The first frost arrives one morning in late November. It glitters across the wide lawn and paints the edges of the wrought iron gate with thin silver. The plantation seems to hold its breath beneath the cold quiet, still, but not dormant, just resting. Bradford watches from the study window, sipping black coffee from a heavy porcelain mug. The room smells faintly of cedar and old pages. Firelight flickers across the floor, and in the corner the mirror leans slightly forward, as if listening. There have been no more messages, no more visions, just warmth and silence. But the kind of silence that follows the closing of a final chapter. Downstairs, Elizabeth strings garlands of pine across the front banister. Charlotte helps her, carefully tying velvet bows and humming soft holiday melodies that echo faintly through the hallways. The house, so long haunted by absence, now hums with presence. Bradford steps into the parlor and finds a box waiting on the armchair, wrapped in simple brown paper. No name, no note, just a pressed white rose tucked under twine. He opens it slowly. Inside, a bundle of pages, his pages, typed, edited, annotated. The manuscript of his account, the one he'd handed to the local archivist weeks ago. Someone had copied it, preserved it, and returned it with reverence. At the bottom, a note written in fine script. "We thought you should have the last word. History thanks you. Louisiana Historical Preservation Society." He doesn't smile. He breathes, and that is enough. That evening, as dusk settles into mauve and indigo, he stands once more before the mirror in the unused room, Charlotte's room now. A soft scarf hangs from the corner. Books line the shelves. A porcelain lamp glows with amber light. He looks into the glass. His own face looks back, softer now, lines deeper, but eyes clear. Behind him, nothing, and yet everything. He speaks gently, not to summon, not to stir, just to acknowledge. "Good night, Delphine." No reply, just a faint warmth like a hand resting on the shoulder, and then it's gone. The mirror holds only his reflection. The fire crackles once, and the room exhales. As he leaves, Charlotte looks up from her book. "Talking to your friend again?" Bradford chuckles softly. "Maybe. She liked you." He pauses in the doorway. "How do you know?" "She said so. Once. In the mirror." Bradford doesn't ask when, doesn't need to. He just nods and lets the past rest. Winter deepens. Frost clings longer to the windows each morning, and the hearths burn from dawn to dusk. The plantation's once dense humidity has retreated, replaced by crisp air that carries every sound cleanly: the creak of wood, the snap of fire, the rhythm of footsteps in the hall. Bradford rises earlier now. He begins his days in the library, sorting through crates of documents from the local archives. Requests for copies of his manuscript have grown schools' preservation groups, even a small publishing house. But he's in no rush. The story was never meant to be profitable. It was meant to be heard. Charlotte joins him some mornings, curled into the armchair with a blanket and a book of poetry. Her presence fills the room with something gentle and unspoken. Bradford watches her from his desk, the way her eyes follow the lines, the way she pauses to reread certain verses. One morning she says, "I think I want to write a book." He smiles. "What kind?" "About houses, the ones that feel things." Bradford nods. "Start with this one." That afternoon, while tidying the upper gallery, he finds something unusual. Tucked behind an old dresser wedged deep into the wooden paneling is a key. Small, brass, worn smooth. He knows immediately it belongs to nothing in the modern house. That night by firelight, he returns to the attic. He brings the old trunk down, sets it in the center of the unused room, Charlotte's room, and opens it slowly. Inside, beneath the old linens and yellowed papers, is a box he's never noticed before. Locked. He fits the brass key into the tiny keyhole. It clicks. The lid creaks open. Inside, a single page, folded, handwritten. The ink is faded but legible. To the one who stays long enough to understand, "You were never meant to carry our sorrow. You were meant to release it. Tell the story. Let the house breathe again." Below the message, a signature, Cécile Allard. He freezes. Cécile, not Delphine. Another name, another voice. The house wasn't haunted by one story. It was layered with generations of memory, grief, and silence. Cécile had waited too, not for vengeance, but for witness. He holds the page close to the firelight, reading it again slower. A soft rustle stirs the curtains. He doesn't turn. He only whispers, "I see you." The wind stills, and somewhere deep in the walls, a soft sigh rises like breath let go after years held tight. The page does not fade. It stays whole, and so does Bradford. Snow arrives in the most unexpected way, quiet, almost secretive. A light dusting across the porch roof, the fields, the tops of hedges. Louisiana doesn't often wear white, but when it does, it looks like the house is dressed in memory. Bradford steps outside just past dawn. The ground is dusted with frozen lace, the trees adorned with fine sugar. The plantation, usually defined by humidity and warmth, now carries a stillness so profound it feels like time itself has paused to look back. In the silence, his breath is the only thing that moves, soft and clouding, in front of him, fading like ghost words on winter air. Inside, Charlotte bounds down the stairs in thick socks and a scarf, eyes wide with the magic of snow she's rarely seen. "Can I go out?" Bradford smiles. Of course. He watches from the window as she runs into the yard, arms outstretched, twirling like she's dancing with something invisible. And maybe she is. Behind him, Elizabeth hums a lullaby he doesn't recognize. Later that morning, while polishing the frame of the hall mirror, he notices something strange. The reflection lags, just for a blink. His hand finishes wiping, but in the glass it moves half a second later. He doesn't panic, doesn't even flinch. He simply watches. In the mirror, a woman stands at the end of the hallway. Not in reality, only in the glass. She's not green, not veiled in shadow. She wears white, plain, hair braided, no expression. But her eyes meet his, and in them recognition. Not fear, not malice, only the calm of someone who knows they are no longer alone in their remembering. Bradford nods. The woman nods back and fades. Behind the mirror's frame, pressed where wood meets silver backing, he finds something small. A ring, thin, dull gold, set with a milky pearl. The initials C.A. etched on the inner band. Cécile Allard's. Another layer, another thread. He places the ring gently on the shelf beside the journal. The comb, the rose. The house, it seems, is still unfolding itself. That evening, Charlotte sits by the fire and reads aloud a passage from her new writing. A novel, she says. Fiction, but inspired. The house was never cruel. It only held what others left behind. And waited. And waited. Until someone came along who finally looked long enough to see it breathing. Bradford leans back in his chair, eyes on the ceiling where a faint crack runs like a healed scar. The house breathes, and he breathes with it. The snow melts slowly, leaving the earth damp and rich beneath it. Shoots of green begin to peek through, and the plantation shakes off winter, like a shawl falling from old shoulders. The light changes again, less silver, now more gold. Bradford wakes before the sun. Something has tugged him from sleep, not violently, but insistently. A pull in his chest. A thought not quite formed. He dresses quietly, moving through the house with practiced ease, stepping over the one floorboard that still creaks despite all his repairs. He pauses in front of the mirror in the upstairs hall. It's silent still, but he knows something waits. He heads to the attic. This time he's not looking for what was hidden. He's listening. The floorboards groan as he steps into the dusty air. The trunks are where he left them, but he doesn't approach. Instead, he walks to the far corner where the rafters sag and the shadows gather thickest. There he finds a panel in the wall, not quite flush. He presses gently. It opens with a sigh. Behind it, a narrow space, a crawl void wrapped in darkness. He reaches in and pulls out a bundle wrapped in oilcloth tied with twine brittle and blackened with age. He brings it into the light, unwrapping layer after layer until the cloth falls away. Inside, another journal, older. The leather binding cracked the spine, delicate. The name etched faintly on the cover, Jacques Salard, 1798. Bradford sits cross-legged on the attic floor as the sun begins to rise, warm gold spilling in through the slats. He opens to the first page. The script is sharp formal. Today, I bury what should never have lived in light. Not my daughter, but the curse that follows her. I pray this house forgets, but I fear it never will. He flips further. Sketches, notations, descriptions of rituals, warnings, mentions of mirrors as gateways, of reflections that mimic but do not belong, of Delphine, of Cecile, of a line of women blamed, hidden, silenced. It was never just one ghost. It was generations of them, branded not by evil, but by sorrow, by the refusal of the world to listen. Bradford closes the book. He doesn't need to read every word. He already understands. Downstairs, Charlotte stirs. He hears her laughter, still sleepy, unguarded. He smiles. Then with gentle care, he carries the journal down to the study, places it beside the others, and lights a single candle. There are no more secrets, only stories. And stories are meant to be told. That evening, he begins to write again, not as a chronicler of hauntings, but as a witness to memory. His new manuscript opens simply. The house never asked to keep their pain. It only held what no one else would. Until one day, someone finally stayed long enough to say their names out loud. And outside, in the fading light, the wind brushes against the shutters like fingers on old piano keys. A song, not of warning, but of peace. The days stretch longer now. Sunlight lingers on the porch steps until late evening, casting golden ribbons across the floorboards. The house, once soaked in shadow and silence, now holds a kind of serenity that hums just beneath the wood and glass. Bradford begins clearing the west wing. It had remained shut for years, unused, untouched. Its rooms cloaked in a hush, heavier than dust. He opens the doors one by one, letting the breeze sweep through and scatter the silence. He finds things he hadn't known were there. A child's shoe tucked behind a warped dresser. A rusted key without a lock. A painting turned to face the wall, the canvas cracked, but still intact. He turns it around. The portrait is of a girl no older than 9. Pale dress, dark curls, solemn eyes. She stands before the veranda, one hand behind her back, the other resting on a small book. At the bottom, barely visible beneath the paint, Cecile 1804. Bradford carries the painting to the main hall, hangs it beneath the mirror. Not above, beneath, as if to say you were always more than what they saw in reflection. Charlotte passes by and stops. She looks like she knows something. She does, Bradford says. That night, a storm rolls in from the east. Not violent, just steady, rhythmic, with thunder like a heart beating in its sleep. Rain taps the windows in soft pulses. Bradford lies in bed, the house wrapped in that deep velvet silence storms sometimes bring. Then a sound, not sharp, not sudden, just footsteps, slow, bare, padding across the upstairs landing. He doesn't move, doesn't need to. A figure appears at his open bedroom door. She doesn't speak, she doesn't weep. She only looks at him, young, pale-haired, damp from rain. Cécile. Her eyes are clearer than before. Not haunted, not searching, just present. She raises her hand, not in farewell, in thanks, and turns, walks down the hallway, not vanishing, just leaving. By morning, the storm is gone. The floors are dry. No trace of footprints on the wood, but on the mirror in the hall, faint and glistening like dew, one sentence remains. Tell her I remember the garden. Bradford doesn't need to guess who the message is for. He finds Charlotte by the window, sketching in her journal. He reads the words aloud. Her face stills, then softens. She was always there, she says, even when no one else saw. Bradford sits beside her, says nothing, because nothing more needs to be said. The house is no longer speaking in riddles, only in remembrance. Spring settles in with a patient grace. Wisteria climbs the lattice beside the porch. Its pale leaves swaying gently in the wind like sighs made visible. The air carries the scent of wet earth and magnolia. The plantation is breathing again, its walls no longer tight with secrets, its rooms filled with living voices. Bradford spends his mornings tending the front garden where new shoots emerge stubbornly between stones. He works in silence, but not alone. There's always a presence nearby. Not oppressive, not haunting, just attentive. Charlotte has taken to walking the grounds barefoot, notebook in hand, sketching strange symbols she finds etched faintly into tree bark or beneath the eaves. Not sinister, just old. Layers of history still unfurling, offering themselves now without resistance. One afternoon, Bradford receives a letter, no return address. Inside a single sheet of linen paper typed in a crisp serif font. We read your manuscript. We believe you've uncovered more than a haunting. We believe you've witnessed a reckoning. Would you allow us to archive the full account under the Living Memory Project? Your words could become a sanctuary for others searching their own histories. Respectfully, A.M. Caldwell, Historical Memory Society. Bradford folds the letterhand steady. He doesn't reply right away. Instead, he walks to the upstairs hall, past the mirror, past Cécile's portrait, and into the unused guest room where the last journal rests beneath glass. He reads the first line again. Today I bury what should never have lived in light. Then looks out the window. Below, Charlotte kneels in the grass beside the old rose hedge, gently brushing away leaves from a stone marker. Her face is calm, focused. Bradford thinks of the word reckoning. No, this wasn't revenge. It was release, a giving back of names. That evening, he writes his reply. To A.M. Caldwell, I do not wish for this story to be shelved, dissected, or rewritten by distant hands. But I do wish it to be read. Let it live among the others, those stories that were once shadows. Let it breathe like the house now breathes. With care, Bradford Ellis. He seals the letter with a drop of wax, presses the old Allard crest into it, the one he found etched on the brass key, and sets it aside for morning post. When he turns back to the room, the candle on the desk flickers once, though the windows are closed. For a single fleeting second he smells jasmine. Again, faint and fleeting, but unmistakable. A farewell, not a haunting. And in that moment, Bradford knows the story has finished telling itself. But the house is only just beginning. The days unfold gently now, as if time itself has softened around the house. The plantation no longer feels like a place trapped in its past. It feels like a memory held open pages, turning slowly, carefully, without tearing. The tension that once curled beneath the floorboards and hummed in the mirrors has vanished. What remains is presence. Attentive, yes, but no longer watchful. Bradford spends the afternoon rearranging the study, not because it needs order, but because the space now deserves attention. Books that once lay in chaotic stacks now rest side-by-side spines, gleaming in filtered sunlight. The journals, the ones that started it all, sit in a wooden display case beneath the front window. He pauses as he lifts Cecile's journal, now more fragile than ever, to place it in the case. Something flutters from between the pages, a dried magnolia petal, pressed flat, its ivory surface browned slightly at the edges. He stares at it a long moment before placing it atop the final page like a closing signature. Charlotte enters the room barefoot, a small envelope in hand. For you. It's addressed in looping, almost childlike script. To the man who listens. Inside a crayon drawing, a house large and square with warm yellow windows and a curl of smoke rising from the chimney. In the yard, stick figures, one tall one, smaller one holding a flower. A tree stands on the side with a heart carved into the trunk. In the upper corner, a small girl with a green dress smiles from the sky. I found it tucked into the mirror frame, Charlotte says. It wasn't there yesterday. Bradford blinks slowly. Who's it from? Charlotte shrugs gently. Does it matter? He smiles. No, it doesn't. That night, he leaves the drawing propped on the mantel. Not framed, not encased, just resting gently like a whisper, finally spoken aloud. Before bed, he walks the halls once more. No need to check, just to remember. Each room now holds something real. The former nursery, once shuttered, now carries the scent of fresh linen and lavender. The West Wing, restored and open, contains a gallery of family photographs and historical sketches, a timeline that connects the living with the long gone. And in the main hallway beneath the portrait of Cecile, a new plaque has been mounted. To all who came before we see you now. Bradford stares at it in silence. No words come, only warmth. He turns in early, the sheets crisp and cool. And for the first time since arriving, he dreams not of footsteps or whispers. He dreams of laughter, soft, distant, children playing beneath trees, voices echoing with the kind of joy that never needed to be summoned, only remembered. And when he wakes, there is only sunlight on the floor, and peace. Morning light pours through the east windows like honey, thick and slow and golden. The walls, once grayed with sorrow, now glow with quiet gratitude. It's a morning that doesn't just begin. It settles like warm tea in a quiet room. Bradford stands at the edge of the front porch, cradling a mug in both hands. The steam curls upward, catching in the early sun. Below, dew clings to the grass, sparkling in the hush, before the world fully wakes. Behind him, the house is still, not empty, just content. Charlotte emerges barefoot, wrapped in a blanket. She leans her head against his arm without a word. They watch the morning together. Down by the edge of the garden, a woman walks between the rows of blooming jasmine. Pale dress, bare feet, hands trailing gently over petals. For a moment, Bradford thinks it's an illusion, a trick of the light and memory. But Charlotte sees her too. She doesn't vanish. She walks slowly, almost reverently, until she reaches the old swing hanging from the magnolia tree. There she pauses, her face turned just slightly as if feeling their gaze. Then she sits, gently, naturally, as though she never left. The swing creaks once, then stills. Bradford and Charlotte exchange no words. There's no fear, no awe, only recognition. Later that day, Bradford returns to the attic one last time. He brings a notebook. Not to research, not to discover, just to sit. He opens a fresh page and begins writing, not as a historian, not as a witness, but as a part of the house's breath. Some places are not haunted by tragedy, but by the ache of being misunderstood. This house never asked for silence. It asked for remembrance. Outside, the wind shifts. Not cold, just present. A whisper through the eaves, an exhale. Downstairs, Charlotte plays the piano, a slow, lilting tune that seems to pull time gently behind it, like ripples across still water. The melody carries through the house, filling the rooms, curling into corners, touching the attic walls. Bradford smiles. The song sounds like sunlight. That evening, the air turns warm again, early summer, pushing at spring's shoulder. Moths dance against the lanterns on the porch. The old rocking chair creaks gently, though no one sits in it. Not yet, but it waits. For company, as it always has. The house no longer reaches into mirrors for attention. Now it opens windows and lets the world in. Summer arrives not with fanfare, but with a long, contented sigh. The air grows thicker, fragrant with gardenia and sweetgrass. The nights stretch lazily into the small hours, stars blinking between the branches. Like the house itself is looking up, remembering how to dream without ghosts pressing on its chest. Bradford finishes installing the final display in the west wing. It's modest. A glass cabinet with a single shelf. Inside the ring marked CA, the dried magnolia petal, a folded page from Jacques Allard's journal, and a photograph Charlotte took of the mirror, empty calm, catching the warm light of sunset through its frame. A small brass plate reads, "Artifacts of presence, not haunting, memory." Visitors come now, small groups, writers, historians, descendants. They wander the grounds in silence, reading placards, stepping softly as if not to disturb something sacred. They whisper names aloud, not in fear but in reverence. Bradford doesn't guide tours. He watches from the porch, a book in hand, and greets each guest the same way, with a nod and a smile that says, "Yes, it's all still here." But gentler now. One afternoon, an elderly woman approaches. She introduces herself as Madeleine Rousseau, great-granddaughter of a woman named Odette, who once worked as a housekeeper on the property in the 1920s. She holds a bundle wrapped in linen. "I found this in a trunk at home," she says. "Didn't know what it was until I read your book." Inside the bundle, a locket. Inside the locket, a curl of dark hair and a miniature sketch of the house drawn in delicate pencil strokes. On the right of Cecile, Bradford places it in the cabinet that evening. When he closes the glass door, he sees his reflection faintly lined older but calm. There's someone behind him, he knows before turning. It's Delphine, not the twisted specter from his first nights. Just a woman now, watching, not trapped, just visiting. She meets his eyes and mouths one word, "Merci," then fades into the quiet like steam off tea. No creaking, no gust of wind, just absence, peaceful, final. That night, Charlotte reads aloud from her growing novel on the veranda, her voice low and even mingling with the drone of cicadas and the clink of iced glasses. They weren't ghosts. They were echoes waiting for someone to stay long enough to hear what the silence meant. Bradford leans back in his chair. The rocking slows, and from somewhere beyond the hedges, jasmine blooms again. As July deepens, the myrtles becomes a place of stillness, not suspense. The house no longer hums with the charge of hidden things. Instead, it rests like an old musician after a long song content, to let the final note fade into soft air. Bradford wakes before sunrise now, not out of restlessness, but rhythm. He walks barefoot through the hall's floorboards, cool beneath his feet, every step echoing memory without weight. He finds Charlotte already in the garden, hands in the soil, humming a tune he doesn't recognize. She looks up and grins, dirt smudged across her cheek. "Morning," he nods. "What are you planting today?" "Peonies. They say they protect a house from sadness." He smiles gently. "I think this house already did the hard work." The day moves slowly. A small group of university students arrives to study the architecture. Bradford shows them where the original beams still bear burn marks from a lightning strike in 1813. They ask about hauntings. He offers only this: "Nothing haunts you once you learn to listen." They scribble it down like a quote. In the afternoon, a letter arrives. Charlotte opens it, her hands careful. It's from a woman named Elise Parmentier living in France. She writes, "I believe Cecile was my great-aunt's cousin. Her name was spoken only in whispers. My grandmother told me Cecile was touched by light and shadow. No one knew what it meant. Now, I think I do." She encloses a photo. A young girl in a lace-collared dress stands in a sun-dappled courtyard. She wears a ring. Bradford recognizes it instantly. The pearl ring now in the cabinet. He places the letter beside the others. The memory network is growing branches, extending across continents, timelines, families. What was once confined to creaking floors and cold mirrors is now breathing in letters, footsteps, and ink. That evening, the two of them sit beneath the magnolia tree. Charlotte lights a single candle on the ground between them. not for ceremony, just for company. They say nothing for a long time. Only the cicadas speak droning on like a summer hymn. Finally, Charlotte says, "Do you ever think it'll stop the stories?" Bradford shakes his head. "No, but they'll change. So will we." He looks at the house windows aglow porch wrapped in shadow rocking chair, gently swaying even without wind. It's not a haunted house anymore. Charlotte leans her head on his shoulder. It's a remembering one, and for once the house does not reply, because it doesn't have to. August arrives draped in golden heat, wrapping the plantation in warm stillness. The air hangs thick with the scent of ripe figs and sun-baked wood, and even the birds seem to speak more softly. Bradford begins his mornings in the orchard, now pruning back branches that droop with fruit. He moves methodically, sweat beating at his temples, fingers careful, gentle, like tending to a living memory. Inside, Charlotte has transformed the upstairs reading room into what she calls the listening library. There's no catalog, no rules, only shelves of donated journals, family letters and oral histories, stories sent by strangers who heard what happened at the Myrtles and felt their own echoes stirred awake. A sign at the door reads, "All ghosts welcome." She laughs when Bradford raises an eyebrow at it. They've earned a seat, don't you think? That night, thunder murmurs in the distance, low and slow, like the earth rolling over in its sleep. Bradford sits at his writing desk, quill in hand, not typing, not researching, just writing in longhand the way he used to, before everything became about proving or preserving. He begins a letter, not to anyone living, not exactly. "Dear Delphine, I hope you felt the shift. Not the thunder, not the heat, but the quiet, the good kind. The kind that comes when no one needs to knock anymore. We don't fear the mirrors now. We look into them, and sometimes we see you looking back." He pauses, then continues. "Thank you for staying long enough to be seen, and for leaving when it was time. You were never meant to linger in fear, only in story." He signs the page, folds it, and sets it beneath the candle on the windowsill. The flame flickers once, then steadies. In the hallway a faint breeze passes, not cold, just there, present. The piano in the parlor plays a single note, soft, a G. Charlotte glances up from her sketchpad but doesn't rise. She knows. It's not a warning, not a plea, just a presence saying, "I remember too." Later that night, a short rain taps on the rooftop, gentle, almost shy. Bradford sleeps deeply. No dreams, only warmth, only stillness. By late August, the house has settled into a rhythm so natural, it's easy to forget it was ever otherwise. The Myrtles no longer looms, it leans. Into time, into story, into peace. Bradford begins planning a small gathering. Not a tourist event, not a lecture. Something quiet. Something human. A night for those who had sent their stories to the listening library to visit and sit beneath the stars together. No speeches, just presence. He and Charlotte hang strings of lanterns along the garden path. They polish old chairs and set cushions on the stone benches. A table is placed beneath the magnolia tree draped in soft linen and set with bowls of figs, chilled tea, and handwritten name cards, only first names. Only enough. At dusk they come, a dozen people, maybe more. A man who once dreamed the same dream 3 nights in a row of a stairway that never ended. A woman who inherited a music box that played a lullaby no one in her family remembered teaching it. A teenager who'd seen her grandmother's silhouette pass by the kitchen doorway a year after she'd been buried. No one asks for proof, only for space. They sit in a loose circle. The lanterns sway gently overhead. Stories flow like rivers, meeting, not crashing, not competing, just weaving into one another. People nod, smile. Some cry. No one apologizes. Bradford shares last. Not the whole tale, just a thread. A house once asked me to remember what it couldn't say out loud. He looks around, and I think I'll answer him. A quiet settles after that, deeper than silence. The kind that feels like hands held like names spoken gently into dusk. The cicadas fall quiet as if listening too. Then from the house a small sound. Laughter. faint high unmistakably a child's. No one startles, no one questions. A few even smile. Charlotte whispers Cecile, and someone across the circle says softly, "She made it." No one asks where. They already know. Back inside, long after the last guest leaves and the lanterns are dark, Bradford walks the hallway one more time. The portrait of Cecile still hangs quietly. The mirror beside it is clear, but in its depths for just a breath a figure passes, not trapped, just remembered, just home. Bradford places his hand gently on the frame and says, "Thank you." No reply. Just a stillness, so full, so tender it feels like a heartbeat. September dawns softly with cool air that curls through the shutters and creeps beneath the doors like an old friend returning from a long absence. The Myrtles breathes in that change, accepting, not resisting, and the walls seem to exhale with it. The season is turning. Bradford watches leaves loosen from the oaks out front, their slow spirals downward as graceful as snowfall. The world is shifting again gently, and this time, the house is not resisting it. It welcomes the change. In the attic, he finds Charlotte sitting cross-legged beside the old cedar trunk where they first unearthed the journals. She's not searching. She's just there, hands folded in her lap, eyes closed, as if listening to something far beyond the timbers and beams. "They're quieter now," she says when she hears him. "Not gone," he replies. "No, just at peace." They sit for a while without words. Later, Charlotte brings down the final notebook she's been keeping since their arrival. It's thick now, edges softened from use pages blooming with sketches, pressed flowers, fragments of names and overheard whispers. She places it on the mantel in the main parlor next to the bundle of letters and the framed photograph of the mirror. She labels it "The House That Stayed." That night, a low fog rolls across the property, curling around tree roots and stone steps like sleep made visible. Bradford lights a single lantern in the hallway. He doesn't need it, but it feels like a gesture, an old ritual of welcome. He walks the room slowly. Each space has changed, not dramatically, but intimately. The nursery now holds a quilt laid gently across the bed. The west wing hums with music from an old gramophone Charlotte restored. The front parlor is filled with the smell of baked apples and cinnamon. No room is empty. No silence is hollow. He returns to the mirror one last time. His reflection is older, yes, worn in places, but his eyes are steady, his face unafraid. And just behind him, not in the glass, but in the air, he feels her. Cecile, the child who once wept without sound, trapped in shadows and stone, now simply watching. Not asking, not lingering, just being. Bradford doesn't speak. He only nods, and feels the nod returned. That night, the final journal entry is written, not in desperation, not in urgency, just in rhythm like a heartbeat at rest. The Myrtles is not a haunted house. It is a home with a long memory. And now it is a place where stories sleep safely. Some ghosts leave, some stay, and some were never ghosts at all. Just forgotten children waiting for the door to open. It's open now. He closes the book, and the house is still. No creaks, no sighs, just peace. Take a moment. Let your breath settle. Let the last images of this story drift softly through your thoughts, like the mist over an old field, familiar, quiet, and undemanding. There were no jump scares here, no screaming mirrors, no chasing shadows, just memories gently placed back where they belonged. Sometimes the most haunting places aren't filled with monsters, but with silence that's never been answered. The Myrtles was never asking to scare. It was asking to be heard. And maybe tonight we did just that by listening slowly, by breathing with it, by staying when the house no longer needed to shout. So wherever you are now, tucked in, lights low, maybe the hum of a fan just behind, This, not all ghosts linger out of anger. Some stay out of love. Some stories end in peace, not terror. And sometimes what was once haunted becomes a refuge. If your mind drifts now, let it drift gently. If your eyes grow heavy, let them close. You're safe. You're still. And the story for tonight is finished.